High Command said the order was impossible. A night mission, no radar advantage, enemy submarines hiding in the dark. Moonlight was his only weapon. They expected him to fail or never return. But by dawn, 4 enemy submarines were gone, sunk in silence without warning. This is the true World War II story of how an impossible order became one of the most shocking night victories at sea. Moon over the Bay of Biscay. March 6th, 1944. Bay of Biscay, off the western coast of France. The sea is almost unnaturally calm. Moonlight spills across the Atlantic like liquid silver, turning every wave crest into a potential betrayer. On the bridge of HMS Starling, Commander Frederick John Walker, Royal Navy, stands motionless, binoculars lowered, listening. Not to the wind, not to the engines, to the sea itself. Below him, sonar operators whisper ranges and bearings in clipped, rehearsed tones. The rhythmic ping of Aztec echoes through the hull, a sound every German U-boat commander knows means death may be seconds away. Walker does not flinch. High Command had called this Mission Impossible. Night operations against submarines were considered reckless at best, suicidal at worst. Radar was unreliable at low angles, Moonlight silhouetted surface ships for enemy periscopes, and German U-boats, hunted relentlessly during the day, preferred to surface at night, fast, deadly, and nearly invisible. Yet Walker had insisted, if they think the night protects them, he had said quietly, then that's where we'll find them. Now, as the convoy lanes behind him fade into darkness, Walker's second support group fans out Starling at the center, flanked by destroyers and corvettes, each crew drilled to exhaustion over the past months. This is not escort duty. There is no convoy to protect tonight. This is a hunt. At 22:17 hours, the first contact appears. A sonar trace, weak, flickering. Possible submarine, the operator reports. Walker steps forward. Hold fire, maintain speed, don't spook him. He knows the German tactic well. U-boats often surface at night to recharge batteries, trusting darkness and moon glare to hide them from aircraft and ships alike. Walker plans to turn that trust into a weapon. At 22:31, a lookout hisses, "Periscope wake port quarter." Walker does not raise his voice. All ships converge, cut navigation lights, engines thrum. Steel cuts water. The U-boat commander below, likely Captain Lieutenant Horse Theme of U 472, realizes too late that the Moonlight he relied on has betrayed him. Against the glowing sea, his conning tower is briefly, fatally visible. Firestar shells. The night explodes in white light. Depth charges roll from Starling's stern, churning the sea into towering columns. Seconds stretch, then a dull, underwater concussion. Oil bubbles to the surface. Cheers erupt, but Walker silences them with a raised hand. "One," he says, "we're not done." By midnight, sonar picks up another contact, closer, this time running deep. The German commander attempts a textbook evasion. Slow speed, silent running, hugging a thermal layer. Walker counters instantly. Creeping attack, half speed, box him in. The British ships move like chess pieces, sonar beams overlapping, moonlight revealing ripples no chart can explain. At 0:48, a second barrage falls. The sea answers with wreckage. 2 submarines gone, and the night is barely half over. But now, the Germans know. Radio intercepts crackle with panic. Nearby U-boats scatter, some surfacing to flee at flank speed. That is exactly what Walker expects. "Signal the group," he orders. "We chase." At 2:10, a surfaced U-boat bolts across the moonlit water, its diesel engines roaring. Tracers streak from Starling's forward guns, stitching the sea around it. The submarine dives too late. Depth charges detonate in a tight pattern. A pressure hull collapses with a sound like distant thunder. 3. The final contact comes just before dawn. This one is cautious, smart. It stays deep, maneuvering constantly, trying to outlast the hunters. Walker studies the plot, jaw clenched, calculating fuel, crew fatigue, time. Then he smiles just once. "He's tired," Walker murmurs. and we are not. At 4:37, the last depth charge pattern is released. The ocean surface breaks with air, debris, and silence. 4 submarines destroyed. As dawn creeps over the Bay of Biscay, Walker finally allows himself to breathe. Against doctrine, against expectation, against the odds, the impossible mission is over. But the implications of what happened this night are only beginning to ripple across the war at sea. Rewriting the rules of the night. March 7th, 1944. Dawn, Bay of Biscay. The first light reveals the aftermath. Oil slicks stretch for miles, rainbow sheen scars on the water's surface, splintered planks, shattered casing metal, and fragments of German equipment bob silently in the swell. Seagulls circle low, crying the only witnesses left to mark where 4 U-boats had vanished in a single night. On the bridge of HMS Starling, Commander Frederick John Walker removes his binoculars and rubs his eyes. He has not slept in nearly 30 hours. Neither has most of his crew. But exhaustion is secondary. What matters is what has just happened and what it means. Nighttime anti-submarine warfare was supposed to favor the hunter beneath the waves. German doctrine relied on darkness, surface speed, and the belief that Allied commanders would avoid aggressive pursuit after sunset. Walker has just proven that belief fatally wrong. Below decks, captured debris confirms the kills. One of the submarines is identified as U-472, another, U-366, had been reported as part of a wolf pack assembling for an Atlantic push. Their radios will never transmit again. Walker gathers his officers. He does not celebrate. "Gentlemen," he says quietly, tapping the chart table, "this wasn't luck, this was discipline. Remember that." His approach is brutally simple and revolutionary. Rather than fearing Moonlight, Walker uses it. He understands that surfaced submarines cast silhouettes against bright water, that even subtle wakes and ripples become visible under a full moon. He coordinates sonar, radar, and visual observation as a single system, not separate tools. Most importantly, he never gives the enemy time. Walker's support groups are trained relentlessly in what he calls continuous pressure. No single depth charge attack, no polite pauses. The moment one ship loses contact, another picks it up. U-boats are forced to dive, surface, maneuver, burning battery power, draining oxygen, wearing down crews. By the time the final submarine is destroyed just before dawn, its crew has been hunted for nearly 6 hours without relief. Later that morning, a signal arrives from Admiralty. Confirm 4 enemy submarines destroyed in single night action. Walker dictates the reply himself. Confirmed. The message spreads fast across Western Approaches Command, through Allied Naval Headquarters, and eventually into German hands. Within days, intercepted Kriegsmarine traffic reveals confusion and disbelief. 4 boats, 1 night, no losses. German commanders begin issuing new warnings. Moonlit nights are no longer considered safe. Surfacing after dark becomes a gamble. Wolfpack tactics falter as U-boat captains grow cautious, splitting formations, avoiding aggressive night maneuvers. The psychological impact is immediate. Where once darkness offered protection, it now promises exposure. For Walker, however, there is no pause. He knows the war at sea is far from over. In the weeks that follow, his methods are studied, copied, refined. Other Allied commanders begin adopting aggressive night hunting techniques. Support groups roam independently, no longer tethered to convoys, actively seeking submarines rather than waiting to react. Losses mount. By mid-1944, the balance of power in the Atlantic has shifted decisively. German U-boat production cannot keep pace with destruction. Crews are less experienced. Training time shrinks. Morale erodes. And always, the specter of that moonlit night lingers. Walker himself will not live to see the war's end. In July 1944, worn down by stress and exhaustion, he dies suddenly at the age of 48. Sailors who served under him line the decks in silence as his body is carried ashore. They know what the history books will later confirm. Frederick John Walker did more than sink submarines. He changed the way the war was fought. On that March night in the Bay of Biscay, he proved that impossible was often just another word for unchallenged. That doctrine could be broken, that fear could be turned outward toward the enemy, and that sometimes, under nothing but moonlight, one calm commander listening to the sea could decide the fate of thousands.